So I think when you're thinking about Commander and the future of Commander, you have to think about why does Commander exist in the first place?
Hmm.
And because it leads to sort of a two-part answer. And Commander has become what it is largely because it's become the primary expression of non-tournament Magic play.
Hmm.
And so there's sort of two questions we have to think about the future of Commander. One is what is the future of non-tournament Magic play, and the second is how or will Commander continue to sort of be the vessel through which that is primarily channeled. And those two are slightly different questions,
Sure.
um, because one is largely kind of under our control, and the other one is absolutely not. Um,
Uh-huh.
so in many ways, the first question, I mean, Commander is likely now to exist as long as Magic does, in some form or another.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah,
That the sort of the future of paper magic is Commander.
well, it's not the future of paper Magic as Commander. It's that Commander is likely to be the most structured way non-tournament play is done.
Right.
For many many years, you had your tournament formats. You had Standard, you had Modern, you had Legacy, and then you had this sort of vast morass of untapped casual play. And what Commander really did is brought structure to that rather than it's its own format, but it tapped into what are the sort of core things that define casual Magic play. And we've been talking about what makes Commander Commander, and it turns out that the rules are like way down the list. The most important
Right.
things to Commander are your focus is on having fun and not worrying too much. We play a game, we finish, we leave it behind. That's actually a really important thing. And then secondarily, it's that when multiplayer is incredibly important, and multiplayer is sort of how people just sort of getting together to play Magic outside of a structured tournament tend to play. I mean, obviously, if there's only two of them, they'll play two, and we're totally compatible with that. But if four of you come over and hang out at your house,
Hmm.
you don't play two-player games most of the time, unless you're doing limited or something else. You
Uh-huh.
just sort of shuffle it all up and get in the middle and have a big melee. So those
Yeah.
two, before we even get to any rules about Commander, those two things are incredibly important pieces of both Commander and non-tournament play, which is why these two things have become sort of inextricably linked. And then we add on the sort of things like the Commander and the color identity and all the rest, and those become our structure, and they add to the flavor and they add to what's going on. But fundamentally, Commander and casual Magic are inseparable at this point.
Yeah, I think the salient point that you mentioned there is that the things beyond the hard rules are what define Commander, and the hard rules are what define every other format in Magic.
Yeah,
So
well, yes, for sure.
even from the beginning, we're taking our definition very differently than everybody else.
Right, and so what that means is that we've become inseparable from non-tournament Magic, and what's the future of non-tournament Magic? And there's lots of reasons to be optimistic there. There's a few reasons to be a little pessimistic there. An obvious one being, well, the quarantine and all the rest of it.
Right.
Casual Magic, getting four people in that room to shuffle up and play is challenging right now. Hopefully one day we'll go back to that and things will return to normal. But we don't know what in 2021 or something. Maybe a vaccine comes out and there's slow distribution and all the rest of it, and maybe at some point we all sort of quietly venture out of our house. Will Magic be part of what we do at that point? I'm optimistic because Magic's a fantastic game and we all love it, but we don't really know what that world's going to look like. So most of the existential threats to Commander are existential threats to paper Magic itself. And then, but that's probably pretty strong. And Magic is a great game, and I'm not too worried there. Then the secondary thing is the future of Commander is will we continue to be the primary structured expression of casual or non-tournament play? And that's an interesting question. Part of it me feels like yes, partly because nobody else is really trying to do that. when you look at people who create new formats, and there are many fine formats that are being created, Canadian Highlander, Tiny
Sure.
Leaders, they all start from a premise of we want to take this fairly seriously. They aren't looking to do non-tournament or more casual focused
Right.
play. They're being built by people who, and this is partly because of the structure of the people who are doing it, is in order to invent formats that you then go and take to the world and publicize everything else, you have to be a fairly heavily involved player.
Yeah, to say the very least.
To say the very least,
Investment.
it's a lot of work to publicize a format.
Tell me about it.
And so, because of the general profile of a very involved player, they're going to want to make a format they want to play. And most of those players who are willing to do this much work want to make a format that is that appeals to them and is sort of heavily involved player formats. And there's nothing wrong with that. To be clear, I mean, this is great and it's a very healthy thing. But we are the only people so far really who've gone and said, what we actually want to do is create a format that isn't tournament. I think that
Right.
derives from our original sort of being judges and being so exposed to
Right.
tournaments. We wanted something to unwind with.
Yeah,
And-
intentionally so.
Right.
I really, from the beginning, it's like, I want this to be a respite from tournament magic. That we can just kick our heels back up and not have to be as hard as we were for the previous 12 hours or 16 hours.
Right, and I think we were in a sort of unique position to do that because we were super involved in tournament magic, but not super involved or not super invested in tournament magic as its own value, own game value. Like we were invested in tournament magic while not actually looking, well, to a certain extent, to play tournament magic. That's why we were judges. I mean, obviously, I was a fairly serious tournament magic player for a long time, et cetera, et cetera. But we were also looking for something different. And so there's, in many ways, there's never been a real, and I use the word very loosely, threat to Commander, in that nobody else is trying to play around in the space that we're trying to play around in. Which means that when somebody who's interested in non-tournament play looks for structure, Commander is the thing they look for.